Hello everyone, it's John Cope again from Cope Racing Transmissions, and we're coming back to you with the 46RE build. This will be part 2. On this particular technical video, we're going to go over the Planetary system, how it is in stock form, and then the performance form that we offer, which will be the billet steel front Planetary, and then everything a machine for bearings and a light and sun show. Then later on, we're going to go to the overdrive section, do the overdrive Planetaries, and set that up. Hopefully this won't be as long, as dragged out as the first video. I just got done editing it and I see it's about an hour and 5 minutes, which they say that in the YouTube world you should keep them down to a half hour, otherwise people will lose their focus or whatever. So I'll try to keep this one in about a half hour too. So the gear set that we're going to set up on this 46RE is an upgrade that we offer, and this same upgrade you can get for our 727. You can purchase this gear set for a 727 with a rear roller support or without, or you can get it for the 46RE. So the factory setup, they all have an aluminum front Planetary, and it's a good piece, except that with trans brake and higher horsepower, the splines inside here have a tendency of stripping out. That spline goes right to the, in this case, the intermediate shaft. But if it was a 727, well, that's going on there a little rough. It would be the output shaft. So this Planetary is splined to the tires. It goes, it goes right from the input shaft or the output shaft right to the drive shaft to the tire. So this Planetary probably takes the biggest hit. That's why we make them out of billet steel. So when you're going to a trans brake, I always recommend that you go from the billet, or you go from the factory cast aluminum front Planetary to the billet Planetary. Now I do offer a cheaper version of this in a 5-pinion all steel with a washer. But for this scenario, this transmission is going to get the top of the line. It'll be the billet steel with Planetary, and we'll get into that. So the factory one is, you got the front Planetary washer, the front annulus, the stock sun shell. This one does have a 4-pinion rear Planetary. A lot of the 727s had 3-pinion rear Planetary, and then the rear annulus. And just to give you a quick note on where the names of all these items come from, this was one of the first things my dad taught me when I was a kid. If you're ever not sure of what part's what, just if you know how our solar system works, this gear set is based off our solar system, where the sun gear is in the middle of all the Planetaries, as our sun is in the middle of it. And then all the Planetaries revolve around the sun. So you see the Planetaries revolving around the sun. And then like on Saturn has rings. The rings go around the Planetary. So this is also called an annulus. You can call it a ring gear, you can call it an annulus, but it was basically named after whoever came up with this, I think the guy's name's Simpson, because this is called a Simpson gear set.
Exactly.
Named it after the solar system. So this, when you're going to get the billet piece, you're going to discard everything except 2 pieces. We're going to reuse the rear annulus or the rear ring gear with the roller kit. So we're going to keep this piece here, and then when you get the light and sun shell in our kit, it doesn't come with the sun gear. So we're going to convert over the sun gear from the stock sun shell to the light and sun shell, and I'll go over a couple things, but I will move the camera so you can see these pieces a little bit closer. We're going to transfer the sun gear from the stock sun shell to the light and sun shell, and I've always found it best to use 2 picks with the 90-degree. It seems to work the best when you're trying to do it. You just start at one end of the clip. And just work your way around. And so you're gonna use the factory washer or spacer and put it on your light and sun shell. And this just shows you how much of a dummy I am. I took this on the laser engraver. And see where I put culpracingtransmissions.com on there? Can you see that? Well, I put it on there, and now it's going to be covered up by this. I wasn't thinking when I put it on there. And then just put your new, or put the same snap ring on there. And make sure that snap ring is all the way in there. I am going to install new bushings in the sun gear itself, but for this, I'm not going to bore you with that. Putting bushings in is pretty common, pretty easy. So you transfer the sun gear to the light and sun shell. You're going to reuse the rear annulus, and you're going to discard this washer on there. You will not need that. When you get your 4-pinion rear planetary from us, it'll have the machining done already for bearings on both sides. And I put a little trans gel on each side there to hold the bearing in place. We're going to put that on there. Put the sun gear and shell in there. Then the front annulus is also machined for a bearing here. The front billet planetary comes machined for a bearing, and it has a bearing and a spacer or a shim. Then it also has this nylon sleeve. And this is common with steel planetaries on the 48s, REs, and the reason is because this nylon sleeve will ride on the annulus, so you don't have metal to metal. When you were running the stock planetaries, it's aluminum to steel, and there's no need for a sleeve, and they got little lube holes there. So we're going to put the bearing back on. This is brand new, all billet steel. Put the front annulus on, the bearing, and then there you have the complete Planetary set for the front. Because of the high horsepower of this particular motor, this is the intermediate shaft for a 46. We're going to go ahead and we're going to swap out the stock intermediate shaft with a hardened intermediate shaft. And there's one thing, if you guys buy an intermediate shaft, you got to remember that you have to, let me get it right here. There is a shim which looks like a big fat E-clip that when you're rebuilding the transmission would really never take that off. You got to transfer that from the stock intermediate shaft to your billet intermediate shaft. If you don't do that, you're going to run into some big issues, end plate issues with both the intermediate shaft and your overdrive unit. So don't forget to swap that clip over. We'll do that now. There's what that shim spacer looking snap ring thing looks like. There is an opening right there. And we'll just put it on the hardened intermediate shaft. There you go. Alright, so what we'll do now is we're going to take the intermediate shaft, we're going to put the Planetary on there, and we're going to check the end play.
Yeah.
Yeah, may I help you?
Calling about the job.
What do you mean, what about the job? Are you applying for a job?
That's right, tough guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work on race cars.
Excuse me?
I worked on race cars for 18 years.
On race cars?
Yes.
You have New York State inspection license?
Yes, I do.
All right. Where are you working now?
Well, right now, I just had to leave an old job because of differences with my fucking boss.
Huh?
I had problems with my boss.
Got troubles with your boss?
Right.
And you're going to want to put a feeler gauge in between the snap ring and the top of the Planetary. Let me get my fat fingers out of the way. Right there. When you go to rollerized Planetaries with bearings instead of washers, you want to tighten that clearance up. It could be anywhere from 4 to 10 thousandths. And these snap rings are selective. And I have them on there on the website if you want a different size. So the Planetary system is all done and assembled. So now what we'll do is we'll go out in the shop and I'll show you guys how to take apart the overdrive unit. Well, we're at the press, and I don't know if this is a tool that most guys at their garage at home are going to have, but You're going to need it to get the overdrive unit disassembled and reassembled. There's two snap rings. There's one here and one in here. And you have to press the big spring in order to get this apart. You'll need, again, your 90-degree seal pick. If you guys don't have this tool at home, which I don't think you will, you might want to just go down to your local transmission shop with your overdrive unit and ask them if they will take it apart so you can rebuild it and put it back together. Once it touches, you only need to go down about a ½ inch or so. And you're going to pop out the big snap ring. Hi, Bigsby. Which I never reuse these. This is the snap ring that you see that's always going to break. Hi, Biggs. Come here. Come here, buddy. This is our shop dog. Say hi. We get a kiss? Yeah. And then there's a small snap ring on the inside you got to take out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it here and come back and use it. Remove the tool. And I'm just going to leave this all together. This is why we need to compress it, because of this Mambo spring. I'm going to put this in the cart. We're going to take this back to the build room, and I'm going to show you everything that goes inside here. First, we're going to remove the overdrive direct clutches. These really never, ever, ever go bad. We are going to put new ones in this though. The 46 uses 8 clutches and 7 steels. The 48 went to 10 and 9. But the reason why these clutches never ever go bad, it's called the overdrive direct. They are applied by this spring, and these clutches are on all the time except when the truck is in overdrive gear. So even when the truck is sitting with the engine off, even when the transmission's not even in the vehicle and it was sitting here on this bench, this clutch pack is applied by this spring. And we had to go to the press to remove the snap ring by compressing this spring. The spring really never fails. I always wanted to take 4 of these bad dogs and put it on a go-kart and see what kind of suspension I'd get out of it, but I never did. So you have the hub and spring. Here are the overdrive direct clutches, and I will replace these even in a 1,000 horsepower application with stock clutches and steels, because this is a pack that never ever ever goes bad because by how they're applied. Then we're going to remove the overdrive sun gear and spacer. There's a bearing that goes on that. Then the overdrive planetary. This one's steel, 4-pinion. They did make them in 5-pinion, and the 48 REs come in 6-pinion. It's a pretty stout piece. Then we're going to use our 90-degree seal pick. We're going to pull out the double roller sprag, and I dropped one of the rollers. There it is, the double sprag. Now we're going to take this spacer off. There's 2 snap rings holding it on. Here's one on the top, and another one on the bottom. then that comes off. Then the only thing you're left is a bearing here that goes on the inner sprag cam. And then there's one more snap ring that holds this bearing on. There's another snap ring in here that holds the output shaft to the overdrive annulus. And from here, we just want to inspect everything. The one thing you really should look out for is pitting on the side of the sun gear. That's probably the most common thing. If you look sideways at the gear, up and down in here, you got to view it from the side. You want to make sure there's no pitting on both the drive side and the coast side. If there is, then you want to replace this gear. It's common, very common to see pitting. The pitting is the beginning of the gear starting to fail. And that's because the whole transmission, the whole vehicle is driven through this sun gear when it's in overdrive. So think about that. You got, if you're towing a vehicle or whatever, everything is coming through this rather small sun gear in overdrive. So you also want to check to make sure your pinions have very little to no end play by rocking them side to side. Up and down is somewhat normal because you need oil clearance there. But if you got any of them that are side to side, by trying to rock the Planetary in the carrier, like this one here. Let me put this down. Yeah, see this one here. Let's see if I can get this so you guys can see it. It's got some pretty good rocking. So this Planetary needs to be replaced. Even if this was a stock application, that's not acceptable. If you can take the Planetary and rock it side to side, and that goes for the front Planetaries also. You want to replace that. So this will go right in the garbage can, so I don't have to check it again. I'm going to replace it with new, and then I'm going to take a super close look, especially after I wash this, because it's wet right now. I'm going to take a really close, hard look and really stare into those teeth on both sides to make sure there's no pitting. And I don't see any. And, you know, sometimes it's not necessarily needed to put a new one of these in. Because sometimes if you got a good Chrysler piece, it's better than any aftermarket piece. Because sometimes these aftermarket, no one makes these overdrive Planetaries in a race deal. Those overdrive Planetaries, you don't get those in a race package. You pretty much are using the stock Planetaries. I have in the past put straight cuts in there. They used the straight cuts on some of the early V10s, which were 47 REs and or RHs, I mean. And they're kind of hard to find. I actually put a set that I was saving for the longest time in the Frostbite Ram truck. And I didn't realize it was my last set, so I didn't even have a set to put in Mr. Haney. But I don't drag race it in overdrive. I only use 3 gears. So that being said, if in the quarter mile, you're really not going to be using the overdrive. So to go to a helical cut set 4 pinion will be just sufficient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wash up all these parts, get them cleaned up. I'm going to get the new clutches for the overdrive direct, and I'm going to get everything clean, back on the bench, Then we'll come back and I'll do the assembly, and we'll go to the press, put everything together, and I'll show you how and I will show you how all that goes. This is the overdrive Planetary that had that one pinion that was rocking. I wanted to take apart and show you what you'll see, or why you don't want to use those Planetaries. Here's the pin. You can see, let me get it stay focused. You can see how it was starting to wear out. There's no wear inside the gear. The gear is actually okay. But the needle bearings, if you look at all the needle bearings, they're all chewed up too. And then this is the center pin again. This is where all that rocking's coming from. The helical cut gears present some side load action when it's being driven, and they ain't gonna last forever. So I just wanted to show you guys that. You want to take a good look and make sure that there's no side action going on. The rocking, you want to take the pinion gear and try and do that. It should only do it very, very little, if any. If you got some rocking motion, if you can rock it, you're going to have bad needle bearings, you're going to have a bad pin. All right, back at the press. You're gonna have to have this tool to line that, press that big spring down. And when I was talking about this going straight, the spring always wants to kind of cock it. And if you start pressing it down with it not being straight up and down, the sun gear can actually start broaching this outer hub. So you gotta take a little bit of care with that when you're doing that. I kind of just press it down and help it out. And it's going down great. Then you just drop your clutches and steels down. If any of you's ever done a pan drop on either an A500, 46, 47, 48 RE and seen a piece of snap ring about that big. And the oil pan, it's this overdrive snap ring, this wavy one. So even if the snap rings are good, which I got them here, I always put a new one in there, just because it's an issue. Then you put the snap ring on your sun gear. Make sure it's in there all the way. I can hardly see it with all the grease. Yep, nice. All right, let's go back to the build room. All right, this is all assembled or put together now. It's time for the final assembly. The one thing I wanted to let you guys know on real quick, and I hope you can see this in the outside glare is not. That window's punking me out. Alright, I'm just going to hold the camera. One of the differences between the E and the H, the 46RE and the 46RH, is there is no speedometer provision. The 46RH will have a speedometer here, and the output shaft will have a worm gear on it to drive the speedometer gear. The E's done away with that. They have a speed sensor here, and then they have another vehicle speed sensor in the differential, but the actual speedometer, which would be about here, I guess, is no longer there. So if you guys are going to put one of these in a vehicle and you still, like an older vehicle that uses a cable driven speedometer, you're going to have to use the H version. This is going into a car that doesn't need a speedometer because it's a drag car, so we're going to go to the H version. And the also a difference is the E's have a governor assembly here, and it has a hole going through it that holds in the governor valves and the worm gear. So this shaft is actually stronger because there's no hole in the center and there's no worm gear. So for strength, the E version is definitely stronger. So, all right, let's start putting this baby together. I got all this assembled. We just did it on the press. The first thing we're going to do, I got the bushing and the seal already in here, is place the output shaft, tail housing on the output shaft. What you do is open this up here, the snap ring, it pops down and then it locks in. And then that'll be in there. And then there's two snap rings that go in the tail housing first. You're going to have a wave and a flat. And the flat will go in first. The wave will go in second. Now I know you're thinking, oh, you could take that wave out and put a flat in there. You could, but with my valve body, it just shifts just too dang. With that wave in there, it's going to be too uncomfortable for you guys. So if you're going to use my valve body, put that wave back in there. So I got my new overdrive clutches pre-soaked. And the way this was from the factory is they would use 2 pressure plates. I'm going to draw back a little bit. They would, from the factory, the overdrive clutches come with 2 pressure plates, 4 clutches, and 3 steels. What I do is I leave one of the pressure plates out and add 1 clutch and 2 steels. And it's exactly the same thickness as a pressure plate. So we'll have our pressure plate, clutch, steel, and the pack will look like this. Pressure plate, clutch, steel, steel. So that way you can get it you can get 5 clutches in the overdrive instead of 4. The pressure plate goes first, then the clutch pack. Then this really wimpy snap ring. And the snap ring just holds those clutches in place for assembly. It really doesn't do anything else. And then we're going to go ahead and put our plate on here with the 2 screws and a new gasket. And then I drill a hole in the plate and put the vent here. Because if you remember, we blocked off the vent in the pump, and we're going to relocate it to here. And that's it. It's done. So this will be the end of part 2. I hope I was thorough enough to show you guys everything. I hope you learned something from it. If you don't build transmissions, a lot of people just like to take a peek inside to see what's going on. So I hope you got something out of it. This particular transmission, the 46RE, is basically what I consider one of my elephant ones. It's really not a cheap transmission. If you do some of the labor yourself, you can save a few bucks. I'm still not building transmissions. This is for a local gentleman who's been a previous customer of mine that asked me to do it, so I'm doing it for him. And so he supplied me with the core, and which was easy because we're running low on cores too. And so thanks for watching. Please like and share with other Mopar guys, and we'll see you on the next one for part 3. Part 3 will just be the final assembly. We'll put the bolt and sprag in, we'll put the servos in, and do assembly on everything. So we'll see you next week. Mopar to ya.
I'll get the hell out of here. We're closed.